Another woman, 62-year-old Stephanie Dowles, was killed there back in November, according to the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation.
On November 13th, 2024, just before 3 in the morning, 62-year-old Stephanie Brinson was pronounced dead inside a California prison conjugal unit. Her cause of death? Strangulation. The man who called for help after she passed out. Her husband, David Brinson, a convicted quadruple murderer, serving 4 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. She came looking for love in a place where 4 men had already lost their lives to the same hands that would take hers. Now here's what doesn't make sense. Stephanie wasn't some desperate woman with nothing going for her. She was a University of Southern California graduate with a degree in special education. She owned a thriving hair salon in Los Angeles, employed people, helped homeless families furnish entire homes, and was the beloved grandmother of 6. By every measure, she had built a beautiful life. Family adored her. Clients trusted her. Her community needed her. So what makes a woman who has everything, a woman who spent decades building success and giving back, decide that a man who executed for people in cold blood was worth marrying? What psychological gap was so deep that it could only be filled by a lifer with 0 chance of freedom? That's the question that haunts this case. And honestly, it should terrify you. Because here's the thing. If you think you could never fall for something like this, if you believe you're too smart or too stable to ignore red flags this massive, then prove it. Subscribe right now and drop a comment explaining what warning sign you would have caught that Stephanie missed. Tell me exactly where you would have drawn the line. And if you won't subscribe, go ahead and comment anyway. Explain to me why you think you deserve to consume someone else's tragedy, learn from their fatal mistake, and walk away without even clicking a free button. I'm genuinely curious. What makes you special enough to take without giving? Because Stephanie paid for her blindness with her life. What's your excuse? Before we talk about how Stephanie died, you need to understand who she was when she was alive. Because the headlines will call her the woman killed by her prison husband. But that label erases 62 years of a life that actually mattered. Stephanie Dowles, known to everyone as Stevie D, wasn't just accomplished. She was the kind of person who made things happen. She graduated from the University of Southern California with a degree in special education. After that, she worked as a law firm office manager, then moved into dental practice management. She became a Mary Kay director, ran bookkeeping operations, and eventually found her true calling as a hairstylist. Her salon, Hair Elite, located in Hawthorne, California, wasn't just a business. It was a destination known for Brazilian blowouts, good energy, and a staff that treated you like family. Stephanie didn't just cut hair. She built community. She created jobs. She gave people a place where they felt beautiful and valued. That takes a specific kind of person, someone who sees potential in others and invests in making it real. And beyond the salon, Stephanie was constantly giving back. She organized donation drives for families who had nothing. When a homeless family witnessed a murder and got placed in emergency housing with 0 furniture, Stephanie mobilized her entire client base. Within days, that family had couches, bedroom sets, kitchen supplies, everything. When a 95-year-old woman needed a wheelchair to get to doctor appointments, Stephanie sent 1 email and had 2 wheelchairs donated in under 15 minutes. She didn't just talk about helping people. She actually did it. But here's where the story gets complicated. In 2017, Stephanie posted a raw, emotional video on Facebook that most people probably scrolled past without thinking twice. She talked about being in pain, suffering heartbreak after heartbreak despite doing so much good for others. She admitted losing hundreds of thousands of dollars because her heart was too soft, because people walked all over her, because she couldn't say no. She prayed for 45 to 50 days straight, asking God to take away the pain. And during one of her morning runs, she said God told her that her heart needed to be even softer. She pushed back, telling him she'd already lost so much from being kind. But then she admitted something that explains everything that came after. Stephanie confessed she harbored deep hatred for someone who had wronged her. She'd been praying for God to remove that bitterness, but it wouldn't go away. And God, according to her, said she needed to fall in love with Jesus so completely that even the worst enemy couldn't hurt her anymore. She talked about people who forgave the murderers of their own children and prayed for those killers' souls. That's where we have to be, she said. That's the level of forgiveness required. She wanted to be that person because, in her words, you reap what you sow. She wanted to reap blessings, so she committed to radical, boundaryless forgiveness. And God told her to get ready for a blessing. Looking back now, knowing what that blessing turned out to be, this video is almost unbearable to watch. Because what Stephanie didn't understand is that forgiveness doesn't require proximity. You can forgive someone and still protect yourself from them. You can release bitterness without giving a dangerous person access to your life. But Stephanie believed the pathway to her breakthrough required her to love without limits, even when those limits existed for a reason. By 2024, Stephanie was thriving. She posted videos calling it the best year she'd had in 12 consecutive years. She was glowing, losing weight with Herbalife, running at 4 in the morning, posting about how vibrant and alive she felt. Her blood pressure was perfect. Her cholesterol dropped. She had no medications to take. She was excited about life again. She took her granddaughters on trips to Las Vegas. She attended Rams training camps and the Playboy Jazz Festival. She was present, active, and deeply loved by her family. Her mother, Ovita Wilson, later said, "I would often tell my sweetheart, you can't save the world." But Stephanie kept trying anyway. She was the glue holding her family together, the one everyone depended on. And somewhere in that season of renewal, of finally feeling happy and whole again, Stephanie met David Brinson, a man serving 4 life sentences for executing 4 men during a robbery in 1994. A man with 0 chance of parole, 0 future outside prison walls, and 0 remorse for what he'd done. And somehow, against every logical instinct, Stephanie decided he was her person. Let's talk about the man Stephanie chose to marry. David Brinson wasn't in prison for some nonviolent mistake or a crime of passion that could be explained away. He was locked up for one of the most brutal, calculated massacres Los Angeles had seen. In 1993, Brinson decided that a man named Robert Marks was a high-level cocaine dealer sitting on a stash of drugs and cash. So he stormed into Marks's apartment, armed and ready to take whatever he could find. But when he ransacked the place and came up with almost nothing, Brinson didn't just leave. He didn't cut his losses and walk away. Instead, he made a decision that would define the rest of his existence and end 4 other lives in the most horrific way possible. Robert Marks was 59 years old. His roommate, G. McCullers, was 20. 2 visitors happened to be there that night, Saladino Elias, who was 33, and William Terry, who was 27. Brinson forced all 4 men to lie face down on the floor. And then, one by one, he shot each of them in the back of the head. Execution style. Cold. Methodical. Final. These weren't heat-of-the-moment killings. This wasn't self-defense or panic. Brinson stood over 4 human beings, looked down at the backs of their heads, and pulled the trigger 4 separate times. He watched each man die before moving to the next one. He had time to stop. He had time to think. He had time to choose differently. And he chose murder 4 times in a row. In 1994, Brinson was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to 4 consecutive life terms plus 20 years. No possibility of parole. He narrowly escaped the death penalty, which means a jury looked at what he did and almost decided he deserved to die for it. The only reason he's breathing today is because 12 people couldn't unanimously agree on execution. That's how close it was. So let's be clear about what David Brinson had to offer Stephanie. No future. No freedom. No ability to build a life, own a home, take a vacation, meet her grandchildren, or grow old beside her. He couldn't take her to dinner. He couldn't defend her if she was in danger. He couldn't provide financially or emotionally in any meaningful way outside of letters and phone calls. What he could offer was conversation, attention, the illusion of depth that comes from someone who has nothing but time to study you, learn you, and tell you exactly what you need to hear. And apparently, that was enough. Stephanie met Brinson online, most likely through one of those prison pen pal websites, where inmates create profiles looking for connection with the outside world. They started talking, and according to her family, their relationship centered around Bible study. They read scripture together. Brinson was enrolled in prison education programs, and Stephanie saw this as proof he was changing. She believed she was helping him become a better person. She told her sons that he was working on himself, that he was different now, that he deserved a chance. Her family pushed back hard. They begged her to reconsider. They asked how she could trust a man who had executed 4 people without hesitation. But Stephanie defended him the same way she defended every other person she'd ever tried to save. You don't know him like I do. He's not that person anymore. Everyone deserves redemption. I see something in him that others don't. And then she married him. Not because she believed he'd ever get out. Not because she thought they'd build a traditional life together. She married David Brinson specifically to access California's Conjugal visit program. Let's not dress this up as some fairy tale romance. Stephanie wanted physical intimacy, and the only way to get that with an inmate was to become his legal wife. So that's exactly what she did. She stood in front of witnesses, said vows to a man in a prison jumpsuit, and became Mrs. Brinson, a quadruple murderer's wife. And California's system said that was perfectly fine, because David had demonstrated sustained good behavior behind bars. As if not killing anyone else while locked in a cage somehow erased the 4 men he'd already murdered. Stephanie's family was devastated. Her sons couldn't understand it. Her mother was heartbroken. But Stephanie had made up her mind, and once she committed to something, she didn't back down. She started making regular trips to Mule Creek State Prison in Amador County for visits. And because she was now legally married to an inmate, she qualified for extended family visits in private units. These weren't supervised meetings in a crowded visitation room. These were 30 to 40-hour stays in apartment-style facilities on prison grounds where she and Brinson could be alone. Completely alone. With minimal check-ins from staff, because the system prioritized inmate privacy and dignity. And for a while, those visits went fine. Nothing happened. No incidents. No red flags that anyone noticed. But that's how predators work. They don't show you who they really are until you're too far in to escape. Brinson had spent decades in prison learning how to behave, how to follow rules just enough to earn privileges, how to appear reformed while staying exactly who he'd always been. A man capable of looking someone in the face and taking their life without hesitation. And Stephanie, bless her heart, believed love could change him. Now let's talk about the system that made this tragedy possible. California is one of only a handful of states that still allows conjugal visits, or as they officially call them, family visits. And the way the program is set up is genuinely insane when you break it down. These visits happen in private apartment-like facilities located on prison grounds. They last anywhere from 30 to 40 hours. That's more than a full day alone with an inmate. The units are designed to feel like small apartments. There's a bedroom, a bathroom, a kitchen area, basic furniture. The whole point is to give inmates and their families a sense of normalcy, a chance to maintain intimate relationships and family bonds despite incarceration. In theory, it sounds rehabilitative. In practice, it creates opportunities for exactly what happened to Stephanie. Here's what shocks most people when they learn about this program. Certain categories of inmates are automatically banned from family visits. If you're on death row, you can't have them. If you're convicted of a sex offense, you're disqualified. If you're going through the initial reception process when you first arrive at a prison, you have to wait. If you're currently under disciplinary restrictions for breaking prison rules, no visits. But here's what's not on that list. Multiple murder convictions, life sentences without parole, executing 4 people in cold blood. None of that automatically disqualifies you. As long as you demonstrate what the California Department of Corrections calls sustained good behavior, you can apply for and receive approval for these private, extended visits. David Brinson qualified because he followed the rules inside prison. Think about how backward that is. A man who proved he could execute 4 human beings one after another, who showed zero remorse, who will never see freedom again, was deemed trustworthy enough to be left alone with a vulnerable woman for nearly 2 days at a time. The system looked at his record and said, sure, he murdered 4 people on the outside, but he hasn't killed anyone in here. so he's earned privacy. And the privacy part is what makes this so dangerous. According to the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation Operations Manual, staff are supposed to check on inmates during family visits at least 4 times within a 24-hour period. They can also conduct unscheduled inspections if the watch commander deems it necessary. But here's the catch. Every effort shall be made to ensure the inmate's privacy. That language right there is the problem. Privacy for a man serving 4 life sentences for murder. Privacy that prioritizes his dignity over the safety of his visitor. Privacy that meant when Stephanie was being strangled, there were no cameras recording it. No panic button she could press. No guard standing close enough to hear her call for help. Just David Brinson's hands around her throat, and all the time in the world. Stephanie had visited Brinson multiple times before November 13th, 2024. Her family said those earlier visits seemed to go fine. Nothing alarming happened. No incidents were reported. And that's exactly why everyone's guard came down. Her sons stopped worrying as much. Prison officials saw a pattern of peaceful visits and assumed everything would continue that way. Stephanie herself felt safe because nothing had gone wrong yet. But that's the thing about violence from someone like Brinson. It doesn't need a long runway. It doesn't require build-up or warning signs. All it takes is a few minutes of opportunity and a decision to act. And on that November night, during what should have been just another conjugal visit, David Brinson made that decision. At 2:11 in the morning, Brinson used the family unit phone to call prison officers. He told them his wife had passed out. That's it. No panic in his voice. No screaming for help. Just a calm report that Stephanie was unconscious. Officers rushed to the unit and found her unresponsive. They attempted CPR and called for paramedics immediately. But it was already too late. Stephanie Diane Brinson was pronounced dead at 2:51 in the morning, 40 minutes after her husband called for help. The initial assumption was natural causes. A 62-year-old woman, maybe a heart attack or a stroke. Prison officials documented it as a sudden medical emergency. Her family was notified that she'd passed away during her visit. And for 4 months, that's what everyone believed. Stephanie's family grieved what they thought was a tragic but natural death. They planned her funeral. They remembered her as the vibrant, giving woman she'd always been. They tried to make sense of losing her so suddenly. And the whole time, the truth was sitting in an autopsy report waiting to destroy them all over again. Because in March of 2025, the Amador County coroner finally released the official cause of death. Homicide. Manner of death? Strangulation. Stephanie didn't pass out. She didn't have a heart attack. She was murdered. And the man who called to report she'd passed out was the same man who strangled the life out of her while they were alone in that private unit. For 4 months, Stephanie's family mourned under a lie. They buried her believing she died of natural causes. They told themselves that at least she went peacefully, that at least she was with someone she loved when it happened. They tried to find comfort in the idea that her heart just gave out, that it was her time. But the entire time they were grieving, the truth was being hidden from them. Natural causes. That's what the initial report said. Prison officials closed the case quickly and quietly. No investigation. No deeper questions. Just a 62-year-old woman who happened to die during a prison visit. These things happen, right? Older people have heart attacks. Medical emergencies occur. There was no reason to suspect foul play because the man who reported it was already serving 4 life sentences. What more could he possibly do? But Stephanie's family couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Her son, Armin Torres, told reporters they were devastated but also confused. His mother was healthy. She just posted videos about how great she felt, how her blood pressure was perfect, how she had no health problems at all. She was running every morning. She was vibrant and full of life. The sudden death didn't add up. They pushed for answers. They demanded a thorough autopsy. They refused to let this go quietly. And 4 months later, in March of 2025, the Amador County coroner finally confirmed what the family had feared all along. Stephanie's death was not natural. It was not peaceful. It was homicide by strangulation. She was murdered. Let that sink in for a second. Stephanie Brinson was strangled to death inside a California state prison while visiting her husband. And for 120 days, her family was told it was natural causes. 120 days of believing a lie while the state sat on the truth. 120 days of grieving wrong because officials either didn't look closely enough or didn't want to admit what had happened. Now the question everyone's asking is, how long was Stephanie alone with David before he killed her? The visit could have lasted up to 40 hours. At what point during that time did he decide to end her life? Was it planned from the moment she arrived? Did something happen that triggered him? Or was this always the end game, just waiting for the right moment when no one was watching? Because here's the horrifying reality. Strangulation doesn't happen instantly. It's not like a gunshot where death is immediate. Strangling someone takes time. It takes sustained pressure. It takes physical effort and the conscious choice to keep going even as the person fights back. Stephanie would have struggled. She would have clawed at his hands. She would have tried to scream, tried to breathe, tried to escape. And where were the guards during this? Where were the check-ins that were supposed to happen every few hours? The manual says staff should monitor these visits at least 4 times in 24 hours. But clearly that didn't prevent what happened. If they checked at midnight and planned to check again at 6 in the morning, that's a 6-hour window where anything could happen. And it did. There were no cameras in the conjugal unit because privacy is protected. There was no panic button Stephanie could press because the system assumes these visits are safe. There was no audio monitoring because inmates have a right to intimacy with their spouses. So when Stephanie needed help, when she was fighting for her life, there was no way for anyone to know. She died alone with her killer. Her family is demanding accountability, and they deserve it. Armand Torres told the media he wants to know how this was even possible. How does a man with David Brinson's history get unsupervised access to anyone? How does the state justify leaving a woman alone for hours with someone who's already proven he can kill without hesitation? What part of 4 execution-style murders suggests this man earned privacy? The California Department of Corrections released a statement saying family visits are a privilege and inmates must meet strict eligibility criteria. They emphasized that only those who demonstrate sustained good behavior are approved. But here's the problem with that logic. Good behavior in prison doesn't erase what you did to get there. Following rules while locked in a cage doesn't prove you're safe around free people. David Brinson behaved well in prison because he had no choice. There's structure, surveillance, and consequences for breaking rules. But put him alone in a room with someone vulnerable, someone he has control over, and the mask comes off. The real David Brinson, the one who executed 4 men without blinking, came back. And Stephanie paid the price for the state's failure to see that coming. Now investigators are piecing together what happened that night. They're reviewing the timeline, interviewing staff, examining the unit for evidence. But here's the frustrating part. Even if they charge David Brinson with Stephanie's murder, what does that actually change? He's already serving 4 life sentences without parole. Adding a 5th murder charge doesn't make him more imprisoned. He was never getting out anyway. So the justice system can't really punish him beyond what's already happening. They can't give him more life sentences that mean anything. They can't take away freedom he never had. The only real consequence is that other inmates might lose their conjugal visit privileges. California might finally change the policy and ban violent offenders from these programs. But that won't bring Stephanie back. Her family will never get closure. They'll never understand why she had to die. They'll never stop wondering if she called out for help, if she was scared, if she regretted marrying him in those final moments. And they'll never forgive the system that allowed a quadruple murderer to be alone with their mother long enough to make her his 5th victim. So now we have to ask the question everyone's been avoiding. Why? Why did a smart, successful, educated woman with a full life choose a quadruple murderer as her husband? Why did Stephanie ignore every red flag, every warning from her family, every logical reason to walk away? And before you say she was just naive or stupid, stop. Because that's too easy, and it's not true. Stephanie wasn't dumb. She had a degree from USC. She ran multiple businesses successfully. She managed law firms and dental practices. She understood people, read situations, and built a thriving salon from the ground up. This wasn't a woman who lacked intelligence or life experience. So what happened? What makes someone like that vulnerable to someone like David Brinson? The answer is loneliness. Not the kind of loneliness that comes from being physically alone, but the deeper kind. The kind that comes from giving and giving and giving until there's nothing left for yourself. Stephanie spent 62 years being the helper, the fixer, the rock everyone leaned on. She supported her elderly parents. She raised 2 sons. She employed staff at her salon. She organized charity drives. Everyone came to Stevie when they needed something. Money, time, furniture, a wheelchair, a job, advice, love. She showed up for everyone. But who showed up for her? Who filled her cup when it was empty? Who made her feel seen and valued and chosen? That's the vacuum David Brinson stepped into. He had nothing but time, and he used every second of it to make Stephanie feel special. Think about it from her perspective. She'd been hurt before. She admitted in that 2017 video that she'd lost hundreds of thousands of dollars, trusting the wrong people. She'd been walked over, taken advantage of, betrayed by someone she cared about deeply. That kind of pain doesn't just go away. It sits inside you and whispers that maybe you're not worth protecting. Maybe you deserve to suffer. And then here comes David, a man in prison who can't hurt her financially because he has nothing. A man who can't cheat on her because he's locked up. A man who has nowhere to be except present in every conversation, every letter, every phone call. He became her safe space. The one person who couldn't disappoint her the way others had. Except he could. And he did. Fatally. But there's another layer to this that makes it even more dangerous. Stephanie had what psychologists call a savior complex. She genuinely believed she could redeem people through love and faith. That 2017 video wasn't just about forgiveness. It was about her identity. She saw herself as someone who could love the unlovable, who could see good in people everyone else had written off. When God told her to fall in love with Jesus so deeply that even her worst enemy couldn't hurt her, she took that literally. She believed that if she could forgive radically enough, love unconditionally enough, she'd be protected by divine favor. She referenced people who forgave their children's murderers and prayed for those killer souls. She wanted to be that spiritually advanced. That's where we have to be, she said. So when she met David Brinson, she didn't see a monster. She saw a mission. She saw a broken man who needed the kind of love only she could give. She saw an opportunity to prove her faith was real, that her capacity for grace was limitless. Loving David became proof of her spiritual growth. Walking away would have felt like failure, like admitting she wasn't as forgiving as she claimed to be. This is how manipulators like Brinson operate. They don't target strong, confident women because those women have boundaries. They target givers, fixers, women with soft hearts who've been told their entire lives that loving harder is the answer to every problem. Women who believe their value comes from how much they can endure and still show grace. Women like Stephanie. Brinson didn't have to be particularly clever. He just had to play the role. The reformed man. The repentant sinner. The prisoner who found God and wanted to be better. He read the Bible with her because he knew that mattered to her. He enrolled in education programs because he knew she valued growth. He told her exactly what she needed to hear to believe he was different. And it worked. Stephanie started posting about him on social media, defending their relationship to family members who questioned it. She framed their connection as something beautiful, proof that people could change. Her sons told reporters she was pushing David to be a better person, that she believed in his transformation. She wasn't falling for a con. She was investing in a redemption story she desperately wanted to be true. But here's the part no one wants to say out loud. Stephanie also wanted the physical intimacy. She was 62, single, and lonely in ways that went beyond emotional connection. The conjugal visits weren't just about supporting David's rehabilitation. They met her needs too. She was a human being with desires, and marrying an inmate gave her access to something she wasn't finding anywhere else. That doesn't make her death her fault. It doesn't mean she deserved what happened, but it does explain the blind spot. She needed him. And need is dangerous because it makes us ignore what we know is true. It makes us rationalize red flags as misunderstandings. It makes us believe we're the exception to every rule. Stephanie needed to believe David loved her, so she ignored the fact that he'd murdered 4 people. She needed to believe her love could change him, so she ignored the fact that he'd shown 0 remorse. She needed to believe God was rewarding her faithfulness, so she ignored her family's warnings. She needed the relationship to work so badly that she couldn't see it was killing her until it literally did. That's not stupidity. That's tragedy. Because the truth is, most of us are one deep loneliness away from making a terrible decision. Most of us are one unmet need away from ignoring our own safety. Most of us want so badly to be loved, to be chosen, to matter to someone, that we'll accept breadcrumbs from people who should be offering us nothing. Stephanie's mistake wasn't unique. It was just fatal. And that's what makes this case so haunting. She did everything right for 6 decades. She built a career, raised a family, served her community, and maintained her faith. But in the end, none of that protected her from a loneliness so deep it drove her into the arms of a killer. One bad decision, one vulnerable moment, one man who saw her coming and knew exactly how to destroy her. So what could have prevented Stephanie's death? Policy changes would be a start. California needs to ban inmates serving life without parole from conjugal visits immediately. If you're never getting out, if society has deemed you too dangerous to ever be free, you shouldn't have unsupervised access to anyone. Every conjugal unit needs cameras with audio recording in the main areas and mandatory panic buttons that alert guards instantly. Psychological evaluations should be required for anyone entering a romantic relationship with a violent offender. A therapist should ask the hard questions. What need is this filling? Are you trying to save this person? Because if the answer is yes, that visit should be denied on the spot. But policy won't fix the deeper problem. We need to stop teaching people, especially women, that unconditional love and radical forgiveness are always virtues. They're not. Some people have disqualified themselves from your grace through their actions. David Brinson executed 4 men in cold blood. That told you everything about who he was. No Bible study erases that capacity for violence. Forgiveness doesn't require proximity. Redemption doesn't require your presence. It's not cruel to protect yourself from proven killers. It's wisdom. Predators count on your compassion. They bank on your belief that everyone deserves a chance. They will use your kindness to destroy you. Here's how we honor Stephanie. We remember the businesses she built, the family she helped, the community she served. We don't let her final mistake erase 62 years of goodness. But we also don't sanitize the lesson. She made a choice. A fatal one. And you don't have to. Here's what separates you from Stephanie. Information. You know what she learned too late. So prove you're smarter. Subscribe so you never miss a case that could save your life. Drop a comment with the one red flag you'd never ignore, no matter how lonely you felt. And if you won't subscribe after watching Stephanie die from ignoring warnings, comment and explain what price you put on wisdom. Because she paid with her life for the lesson you just got for free. What's your excuse for not clicking a button? And that's what makes this case so haunting. She did everything right for 6 decades. She built a career, raised a family, served her community, and maintained her faith. But in the end, none of that protected her from a loneliness so deep it drove her into the arms of a killer. One bad decision, one vulnerable moment, one man who saw her coming and knew exactly how to destroy her. So what could have prevented Stephanie's death? Policy changes would be a start. California needs to ban inmates serving life without parole from conjugal visits immediately. If you're never getting out, if society has deemed you too dangerous to ever be free, you shouldn't have unsupervised access to anyone. Every conjugal unit needs cameras with audio recording in the main areas and mandatory panic buttons that alert guards instantly. Psychological evaluations should be required for anyone entering a romantic relationship with a violent offender. A therapist should ask the hard questions. What need is this filling? Are you trying to save this person? Because if the answer is yes, that visit should be denied on the spot. But policy won't fix the deeper problem. We need to stop teaching people, especially women, that unconditional love and radical forgiveness are always virtues. They're not. Some people have disqualified themselves from your grace through their actions. David Brinson executed 4 men in cold blood. That told you everything about who he was. No Bible study erases that capacity for violence. Forgiveness doesn't require proximity. Redemption doesn't require your presence. It's not cruel to protect yourself from proven killers. It's wisdom. Predators count on your compassion. They bank on your belief that everyone deserves a chance. They will use your kindness to destroy you. Here's how we honor Stephanie. We remember the businesses she built, the family she helped, the community she served. We don't let her final mistake erase 62 years of goodness. But we also don't sanitize the lesson. She made a choice. A fatal one. And you don't have to. Here's what separates you from Stephanie. Information. You know what she learned too late. So prove you're smarter. Subscribe so you never miss a case that could save your life. Drop a comment with the one red flag you'd never ignore, no matter how lonely you felt. And if you won't subscribe after watching Stephanie die from ignoring warnings, comment and explain what price you put on wisdom. Because she paid with her life for the lesson you just got for free. What's your excuse for not clicking a button?